The funeral director's voice was still echoing in my ears as I stood beside my 7-year-old daughter Ella's casket, when my phone buzzed with Instagram notifications from a 5-star resort in Cabo. My husband Derek was clinking champagne glasses with a woman I'd never seen before, both of them laughing under palm trees while I buried our child alone. The caption read, "New Beginnings." But Derek had no idea that 3 days ago I'd found the real estate contract he'd hidden, the one selling our family home the day after Ella's funeral. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The September rain fell in heavy sheets against the funeral home windows, each drop seeming to mirror the tears that wouldn't stop flowing down my cheeks. I stood in the receiving line, accepting condolences from family and friends, their words of comfort blending into a meaningless hum. She's in a better place now. At least she's not suffering anymore. Time heals all wounds. But the only thing I could focus on was the empty space beside me where Derek Williams should have been standing. My husband of 12 years, Ella's father, the man who should have been holding my hand as we said goodbye to our little girl forever. Instead, he was 2,000 miles away, and I was about to discover exactly what he was doing there. Ella had battled leukemia for 8 months, 8 months of hospital stays, chemotherapy sessions, and sleepless nights watching her tiny body fight a war she was too young to understand. Through it all, Derek had grown increasingly distant. The emergency business meetings became more frequent. The late-night phone calls behind closed doors multiplied. He claimed the stress was overwhelming him, that he needed space to process everything we were going through. I had believed him. I had made excuses for him. Even when he missed her last birthday party because of a crucial client presentation, I convinced myself that he was just coping differently than I was. The funeral service had been beautiful, filled with Ella's favorite flowers, pink roses and white lilies. Her teacher, Mrs. Karen Morgan, had spoken about Ella's bright spirit and infectious laughter. My sister Colleen Henry had delivered a eulogy that left not a single dry eye in the room. Friends and family had shared memories of my sweet girl, painting a picture of a life that, though brief, had touched so many hearts. Derek's absence was glaring. I had told everyone he was too grief-stricken to speak, that he was dealing with his loss privately. The truth was, I hadn't heard from him in 3 days. As the last guests filtered out of the funeral home, offering final hugs and promises to check on me soon, I found myself alone in the viewing room with Ella's casket. The silence was deafening. This was supposed to be a moment shared between parents, a final goodbye to the child we had created together. Instead, I was facing the most devastating moment of my life completely alone. My phone buzzed in my purse. For a moment, hope fluttered in my chest. Maybe it was Derek, finally calling to explain his absence, to apologize for not being here when I needed him most. Maybe there was some reasonable explanation for why he had abandoned me during the darkest time of our lives. But when I pulled out my phone, what I saw made my knees nearly buckle. Instagram stories. Notification after notification from Derek's account, which I had foolishly thought he'd been ignoring out of grief. But there he was, very much active, very much alive, and very much not grieving. The first image showed Derek's hands holding a champagne flute against a backdrop of crystal-clear turquoise water. The Cabo San Lucas location tag glowed at the top of the screen. The timestamp showed it had been posted just 20 minutes ago, right as I was listening to the final prayers over our daughter's casket. My hands trembled as I swiped to the next story. Derek in resort casual wear, sitting at what looked like a high-end beachfront restaurant. He wasn't alone. A stunning brunette woman sat across from him, her head thrown back in laughter at something he had said. She looked young, vibrant, everything I hadn't felt in months. The third story made my heart stop completely. Derek and this mystery woman were walking hand in hand along a pristine beach at sunset. The woman was wearing a flowing white dress that caught the ocean breeze perfectly. Derek was looking at her the way he used to look at me when we were first married. The caption read, "New Beginnings," with heart and champagne glass emojis. New beginnings. While I was burying our daughter, he was celebrating new beginnings with another woman. I sank into one of the funeral home chairs, my legs no longer able to support me. The phone slipped from my numb fingers and clattered to the floor. For several minutes, I couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't process what I had just seen. This wasn't just neglect or poor timing. This was calculated cruelty. Derek hadn't just abandoned me during Ella's final days. He had been planning his escape, his new life, while our daughter was dying. But as I sat there in that empty room, surrounded by the lingering scent of funeral flowers, a memory surfaced that made everything even worse. 3 days ago, while I was making final arrangements for Ella's service, I had gone to Derek's home office to find our insurance documents. His computer had been left open, displaying his email. At the time I had only glanced at it briefly, too consumed with funeral planning to pay attention to what seemed like routine business correspondence. Now that glance took on a sinister new meaning. I remembered seeing something about a real estate transaction, a date that had struck me as odd because it was so close to Ella's funeral. At the time I had assumed it was related to a property investment Derek had mentioned months ago. But now I realized the truth. Derek hadn't just been planning a vacation while our daughter was dying. He had been planning to sell our family home, to liquidate our life together, to erase every trace of the family we had built. The funeral director appeared in the doorway, his expression gentle but concerned. "Mrs. Williams, we're ready to proceed to the cemetery whenever you are." I picked up my phone from the floor, my movements mechanical. "Yes," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Let's take her home." But as I followed Ella's casket out into the rain, one thought burned through my grief with crystal clarity. Derek thought he had already won. He thought he had successfully abandoned his responsibilities, his family, his grief. He thought he was free to start over with his beautiful young girlfriend, while I dealt with the aftermath of our daughter's death alone. He had no idea that his carefully planned escape was about to become his complete destruction, because while he was toasting his new beginnings in Cabo, I was about to begin the most methodical, devastating takedown of his life that he could never have imagined. Derek Williams thought he could trade our daughter's memory for a beach vacation with his mistress. He was about to learn exactly how wrong he was. The cemetery service was a blur of sympathetic faces and muffled sobs as Ella's small white casket was lowered into the ground. I stood there clutching a pink rose, the same type Derek had brought me on our first date. Now, as I dropped it onto our daughter's casket, all I could think about was how he was probably buying drinks for his mistress at that very moment. The rain had intensified, turning the cemetery grounds muddy. My sister Colleen stood beside me, her arm wrapped around my shoulders, whispering comfort I couldn't hear over the roaring in my head. My mother-in-law kept glancing around nervously, clearly expecting Derek to appear with some elaborate excuse. "He'll explain everything," she had whispered earlier. "Derek loves Ella more than anything," but I knew better now. Derek loved his freedom more than he'd loved his dying daughter. After the service, I found myself alone at the gravesite. A small placard marked the spot: Ella Rose Williams, beloved daughter, age 7. The words blurred through my tears, but not from sadness anymore, from pure rage. My phone buzzed. More Instagram notifications. Derek had posted a new video of him and the mystery woman on what looked like a private yacht. The woman wore a tiny bikini, her dark hair whipping in the ocean breeze as she laughed. Derek's voice could be heard. "This is what life should be like every day, babe. No stress, no drama, just us." No stress, no drama. Our daughter had died 4 days ago, and he was calling her death drama. The video continued with Derek filming the woman diving into crystal clear water. "Look at my beautiful girlfriend," he said, with an affection I hadn't heard directed at me in years. "Marissa Hotch, everyone. Isn't she perfect? Marissa Hotch." Now I had a name. I screenshot everything, my hands moving mechanically despite the fury building in my chest. But as I scrolled through Derek's social media, I discovered something that made my blood run cold. Derek had changed his relationship status from married to in a relationship with Marissa Hotch. He had erased our marriage on social media while I was burying our child. I clicked on Marissa's profile. Her Instagram was public, filled with expensive dinners, designer clothes and luxury vacations. But 3 weeks ago, all her photos had featured a different man, someone tagged as Eric Morgan. They looked happy, in love, posting romantic captions about their forever. Then, Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Abruptly, all photos of Eric stopped appearing. If Marissa had been with Eric until 3 weeks ago, and now she was with Derek, that meant Derek had stolen someone else's girlfriend, which meant Eric Morgan was probably just as devastated and angry as I was. My phone rang. Derek's name flashed on the screen. Part of me wanted to answer, to scream at him, but I pressed decline. Then came the text messages. Emergency work situation. I'm hurting too. We need to talk about making changes when I get back. Changes, new house, fresh start. He was using our dead daughter's memory to justify his escape plan. I looked back at Ella's grave. I promise you, baby girl, I whispered. Daddy thinks he can just walk away, but he's wrong. Mommy is going to make sure he pays. That night, I stood in Derek's home office doorway, staring at the mahogany desk where he'd planned our family's destruction while our daughter lay dying. The house felt like a tomb without Ella's laughter, but Derek's absence made it feel like a crime scene. I'd always respected Derek's privacy, but respect was a luxury I could no longer afford. His computer was password protected, but I knew Derek's patterns. After trying our birthdays, I remembered something that made my stomach turn. I tried Marissa 2024, and the screen unlocked immediately. He had changed his password to his mistress's name, and the year he planned to start his new life. What I found in his email account made me physically sick. Months of correspondence with Marissa Hotch, dating back to January, while Ella was still responding well to treatment. The early emails were flirtatious, professional on the surface, but clearly personal. Marissa worked for a real estate company, and Derek had contacted her about investment properties. As I scrolled through their correspondence, the timeline became sickeningly clear. The emails grew intimate just as Ella's condition deteriorated in March. By April, when we'd received devastating news that the cancer had spread, Derek and Marissa were exchanging messages about weekend getaways and future plans. One email thread made me grab the desk's edge. From Derek, dated 2 weeks ago, the same day Ella had been admitted for the last time. My situation at home is becoming untenable. The stress is overwhelming, and I need to think about my own well-being. How quickly can we move on the house sale? I want to be free to start fresh as soon as possible. Marissa's immediate response. I understand completely, baby. Watching someone suffer is so draining. I've prepared all the paperwork. The house can be listed immediately after. Well, after you're free to make your own decisions. They were talking about Ella's death like a business obstacle to overcome, but the most damning evidence was in a folder labeled New Beginnings. Inside were documents revealing the full scope of Derek's betrayal. The house sale contract was real, with a closing date set for next Friday, exactly 1 week after Ella's funeral. Derek had priced it to sell quickly, nearly $100,000 below market value. The buyer was listed as Hotch Holdings LLC, Marissa's company. Bank statements showed Derek had been systematically draining our joint accounts, transferring money to offshore accounts I'd never heard of. Our daughter's college fund, $50,000 we'd saved since she was born, had been emptied 3 days ago. But the most heartbreaking discovery was a life insurance policy on Ella that Derek had taken out 6 months ago, right after her diagnosis. $500,000, with Derek as sole beneficiary. He had been betting on our daughter's death. Then I found text messages between Derek and someone named Eric Morgan, dated 3 weeks ago. Derek, she chose me, man. Get over it. Marissa wants a real future, not whatever juvenile nonsense you two had. Eric, you have no idea what you've done. She's using you just like she used me. And when she's done, you'll have nothing left. Eric Morgan, Marissa's ex-boyfriend. And from these messages, it was clear he knew exactly what kind of person Marissa really was. I searched for Eric Morgan on social media. His profile showed a man in his early 30s with kind eyes that looked like they'd recently been through hell. His most recent post was telling, "Sometimes the people we trust most are the ones who hurt us deepest, but every betrayal reveals the truth about who someone really is." This man had been where I was now. He knew Marissa's patterns, her methods, her weaknesses. I found his phone number and stared at it for several minutes before dialing. "Is this Eric Morgan?" I asked, when he answered. "Yes, who is this?" "My name is Sarah Williams. I think we need to talk about Marissa Hotch and what she's doing to my husband Derek." I met Eric Morgan at a small cafe downtown, choosing a corner table for privacy. When he walked in, I recognized him immediately, but seeing him in person revealed the toll his relationship with Marissa had taken. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, and there was a wariness that spoke of recent betrayal. "Sarah," he said, sitting across from me, "I'm sorry about your daughter, and I'm sorry about what Derek and Marissa are putting you through. You mentioned Derek might be in danger. What did you mean?" Eric's jaw tightened. "How much do you know about Marissa's history?" "Only what I've seen online. Real estate, expensive lifestyle, and apparently she was with you until 3 weeks ago. That's barely scratching the surface." Eric pulled out his phone, opening a folder filled with screenshots. "Marissa Hotch is a professional predator. She targets wealthy, emotionally vulnerable men, manipulates them into liquidating their assets, then disappears with everything." My blood ran cold. "Are you saying Derek isn't her first victim?" "Derek is her fourth that I know of." Eric swiped through photos. "This is James Peterson, a widower she dated 2 years ago. Lost his wife to cancer, had 2 young kids. Marissa convinced him to invest everything in a business opportunity. Within 6 months he was broke and she was gone." The photo showed a hollow-eyed man, standing outside a foreclosed home. "And this is David Chen, divorced father of 3, going through a custody battle. Marissa promised to help him get a fresh start, convinced him to transfer his assets offshore to protect them from his ex-wife. The money vanished, and so did she." "How did you find this out?" "James Peterson found me on social media 6 months ago. He'd been tracking Marissa's movements, trying to build a case. When he saw I was dating her, he tried to warn me. I didn't believe him." Eric pulled out a notebook filled with handwritten notes and documents. "She has a specific pattern. First, she targets men who are emotionally compromised, recent loss, divorce, family crisis. She presents herself as understanding, supportive, the perfect partner who gets it when no one else does." Everything Eric was describing sounded exactly like Derek's situation with Ella's illness. Then she slowly introduces the idea of a fresh start, new location, new life, away from painful memories. She makes it sound romantic, like an adventure they'll take together. "Costa Rica," I whispered. "Exactly. She's used Costa Rica before, no extradition treaty for financial crimes, easy to disappear." She convinces her targets to liquidate everything under the guise of funding their new life together. And then she disappears with the money. Worse, she doesn't just disappear, she actively destroys them first. James Peterson told me that before she vanished, Marissa contacted his ex-wife and gave her information about his hidden assets. It destroyed his custody case. My stomach dropped. She sabotages them. It's like she enjoys watching them lose everything twice, first to her theft, then to the chaos she creates as she leaves. David Chen lost his kids, his business, and his reputation when Marissa leaked his financial information to his business partners. I thought about Derek's arrogance, his confidence that he was in control. He had no idea he wasn't the predator, he was the prey. "Eric, when Marissa left you for Derek, what exactly did she take?" Eric was quiet for a long moment. "Everything. My savings, investment portfolio, the down payment for a house we were supposed to buy together. About $200,000 total. But that's not the worst part." "What's the worst part?" "She stole my identity. Credit cards, bank accounts, business loans, all in my name. My credit is destroyed. I had to declare bankruptcy, and I'm facing fraud charges for loans I never took out. She didn't just rob me, she tried to destroy my entire life. And now she's doing the same thing to Derek. But here's what's different. I don't think Derek is her endgame. I think Derek is just a stepping stone to something bigger." The weight of what Eric was telling me settled over me. Derek wasn't just having an affair, he was being systematically destroyed by a professional criminal. But as I processed this information, I realized something that surprised me. I didn't feel sorry for Derek. After what he'd done to Ella, He deserved whatever Marissa was planning. Eric, I said slowly, what if we didn't try to save Derek from Marissa? What do you mean? What if we let her succeed in destroying him, but then we destroyed her? Understanding dawned in Eric's eyes, followed by hope. You want to let Derek walk into her trap, then spring our own trap on both of them. Derek stole from our daughter's college fund to finance his affair. He took out life insurance on our dying child. He abandoned me at her funeral. As far as I'm concerned, he deserves everything Marissa is going to do to him. I extended my hand across the table.
Partners?
Eric shook it firmly. Partners. For the next 3 days, I played the grieving widow to perfection. When Derek returned from Cabo, tanned and relaxed, I greeted him with tears and threw myself into his arms, as if his presence was the only thing keeping me together. I'm so sorry I wasn't here, he whispered, his voice thick with false emotion. The work crisis was unavoidable. But I'm here now, and we're going to get through this together. I pressed my face against his chest, partly to hide my expression, and partly because I needed to smell him. He reeked of expensive sunscreen and unfamiliar perfume, Marissa's perfume. But I forced myself to cling to him like a desperate woman. I needed you, I sobbed, letting real grief for Ella mix with manufactured desperation. The funeral was so hard, and I kept looking for you. Everyone kept asking where you were. Derek's arms tightened, but I could feel the tension in his shoulders. What did you tell them? I said you were too grief-stricken to attend, that you were dealing with everything privately. I protected you, Derek. Even though I was falling apart, I protected your reputation. Relief flickered across his features. You're amazing, Sarah. I don't deserve you. For once, Derek was telling the truth. That evening, I cooked his favorite meal and set our finest china. Derek seemed pleased, relaxed, as if my domestic display confirmed I was handling his absence exactly as he'd hoped. I've been thinking about what you said in your text, I said, twirling my fork in the rice, about making changes, having a fresh start. Derek's hand paused halfway to his mouth. Oh, you're right. Staying in this house, surrounded by memories of Ella, it's too painful. Maybe we should consider moving somewhere new, somewhere we can heal together. Hope bloomed in Derek's eyes. Really? You'd be open to that? Where were you thinking? Somewhere warm, maybe? I've actually been researching some options. There are beautiful properties in Central America. Costa Rica, specifically. Great climate, lower cost of living, peaceful. I reached across the table to take his hand. That sounds perfect. When can we start looking? Derek's smile was radiant. I've already found a few properties online. We could take a trip next month, see what appeals to us. Next month? Isn't that soon? What about selling the house? Actually, I've been thinking ahead. I already spoke to a realtor about getting the house appraised. We could have it on the market within a week if we wanted. I blinked in apparent surprise. You spoke to a realtor? When? While I was away. I know it seems fast, but Sarah, I think we need to be decisive. The longer we stay here, the harder it's going to be to move forward. You're probably right. It's just this house holds so many memories. Painful memories, Derek said, squeezing my hand. We need to focus on building new ones. I nodded, allowing tears to slip down my cheeks. Okay, if you think it's best for us, then let's do it. After dinner, Derek excused himself to his office to handle business matters. I cleaned the kitchen slowly, listening as his voice carried down the hallway. She's on board, he said in an excited tone. She wants to move forward with everything. The house, Costa Rica, all of it. Pause while Marissa responded. No, she has no idea. She thinks this was all my idea, that I'm doing it for us to heal together. She's completely trusting. Another pause. I know, baby. Just a few more weeks and we'll be free. She signed the insurance papers months ago, and once the house sale goes through, we'll have everything we need. My blood chilled. Insurance papers I had signed months ago. Then it hit me, back in January. Derek had brought me papers to sign during one of Ella's hospital stays. He'd said they were updates to our life insurance policies. But now I realized what I had actually signed. Derek had taken out a massive life insurance policy on me. The plan wasn't just to steal my assets and disappear. Derek was planning to kill me. When Derek emerged from his office, I was curled up on the couch, watching old videos of Ella. He sat beside me, pulling me into his arms. She was so beautiful, he murmured. She was. I miss her so much. I miss her too, but we can't let grief consume us forever. We have to live for the future now. I tilted my head up to look at him, making sure my expression was soft and trusting. Our future in Costa Rica? Our future wherever we want it to be. Derek kissed my head. I promise you, everything is going to be perfect. As I sat there watching videos of our dead daughter while he planned my murder, I made a promise of my own. Derek and Marissa thought they were so clever, but they had no idea they were walking into a trap that would destroy them both. Perfect indeed. The next morning, I met Eric at his modest apartment. The walls were bare, except for a large corkboard covered in photos, documents, and red string connecting various pieces of evidence. It looked like something from a crime thriller. "Welcome to my obsession," Eric said, gesturing to the board. "I've been tracking Marissa's activities for 3 months, ever since I realized what she'd done to me." I studied the board closely. Photos of Marissa with different men, bank statements, property records, even flight manifests. This is incredible. You've built an entire case against her. The problem is, none of it's admissible in court. I obtained most of this through questionable means, but it gives us a roadmap. Eric pointed to a section labeled Current Operations. This is where Derek comes in. Derek's photo was pinned in the center, surrounded by documents I recognized from his computer. But there were additional papers I'd never seen. Bank records showing transfers to accounts in 3 different countries, property deeds for luxury condos in Costa Rica, and what looked like forged identity documents. "She's been busy," Eric continued. "In the 3 weeks since she left me for Derek, she's accelerated her timeline significantly. Your daughter's death provided the perfect cover for moving their plans forward." "What's this?" I pointed to a document labeled Beneficiary Change Request. "That's from Derek's company life insurance policy. He submitted it 2 weeks ago, changing the beneficiary from you to someone named Maria Hutchinson." Eric showed me another document. Maria Hutchinson happens to share a social security number with Marissa Hotch, but he'd have to be dead for her to collect on those. Exactly. Flight records show Marissa made a trip to Nicaragua last month. Nicaragua is where you can buy certain untraceable substances that cause heart attacks in healthy men. My blood chilled. You think she's planning to kill Derek too? I think Derek believes he's the predator, but he's actually walking into a death trap. Why settle for financial ruin when you can inherit everything and eliminate witnesses? I sank into Eric's desk chair, overwhelmed. She's going to kill both of us. Not if we stop her first, but we need help. This is bigger than what 2 people can handle. What kind of help? I have a contact at the FBI. Agent Karen Williams. She's been tracking financial crimes in this region, and when I showed her what I'd uncovered about Marissa, she became very interested. Eric pulled out his phone and dialed. "Karen? It's Eric Morgan. I have someone you need to meet." "Yes, the Derek Williams case. She's Derek's wife, and she has access to evidence we need." 20 minutes later, Agent Karen Williams arrived. She was sharp-eyed, in her 40s, with focused intensity that made me believe she could dismantle Marissa's entire operation. "Mrs. Williams," she said, shaking my hand firmly, "I'm sorry for your loss. Eric has filled me in, but I need to hear your story directly." I told her everything: Derek's affair, the financial theft, the insurance policies, and my discovery that Derek was planning to murder me. Agent Williams took notes throughout. "The life insurance policy on yourself. Do you have documentation?" "I can get it. Derek keeps copies in his office safe." "What about the policy he took out on your daughter?" I pulled out the papers I'd printed from Derek's computer. $500,000, with Derek as sole beneficiary. Agent Williams studied the documents, her expression darkening. "This is worse than we thought. Marissa isn't just running financial scams, she's escalated to conspiracy to commit murder. What can we do?" "Officially, my hands are tied until we have enough evidence for warrants. Unofficially, if you're willing to work with us, we can build a case that will put both Derek and Marissa away for life. What would that involve? Controlled surveillance. You'd continue acting normally with Derek while wearing recording devices. We need them to incriminate themselves on tape discussing their plans. Eric leaned forward. Is that safe for Sarah? There are risks, Agent Williams admitted. But it's the only way to gather evidence that will hold up in court. And Mrs. Williams, you're already in danger. At least this way, we'd be monitoring the situation. I thought about Ella, about the promise I'd made at her graveside. What would I need to do? First, we'd wire your house with surveillance equipment. Then you'd encourage Derek to accelerate his timeline. Push him to move forward with selling the house. With the Costa Rica plans, the more urgency he feels, the more likely he is to reveal details about their endgame. And Marissa, we're hoping Derek will arrange for you to meet her. Once we have recordings of the three of you together, discussing the financial arrangements and travel plans, we'll have enough to arrest them both. I looked at the evidence board, at all the lives Marissa had destroyed, at the photos of Derek planning his escape while our daughter died. Let's do it. Agent Williams smiled grimly. Then welcome to the team, Mrs. Williams. We're going to take down your husband and his girlfriend, and we're going to make sure they never hurt anyone again. As I drove home that afternoon, I felt something I hadn't experienced since Ella's diagnosis: control. I wasn't powerless anymore. I wasn't just reacting to Derek's choices. I was taking action, fighting back, and I had allies who understood exactly what needed to be done. Derek and Marissa thought they were so clever, but they had no idea they were about to become the subjects of a federal investigation, and I was going to be the one to deliver them both to justice. 2 days later, while Derek was at work, a team of FBI technicians disguised as cable repair workers installed surveillance equipment throughout our house. Agent Williams supervised the operation, ensuring that every room where Derek might reveal incriminating information was covered. Tiny cameras were hidden in smoke detectors, microphones embedded in picture frames, and recording devices concealed behind electrical outlets. The quality is remarkable, Agent Williams explained, as she showed me the monitoring equipment they'd installed in our basement. We'll be able to hear and see everything in real time from our surveillance van parked 3 blocks away. I tested the nearly invisible wire they'd taped to my chest, running from my collarbone to a tiny transmitter hidden in my bra. How long do you think it will take to get enough evidence? That depends on how quickly we can get Derek to reveal details about the murder plot. The financial crimes are already documented, but we need him to explicitly discuss plans to harm you. That evening, I put the first phase of our plan into action. Derek had been working late again, no doubt coordinating with Marissa, so I had dinner waiting when he arrived home. I'd also prepared what looked like a casual financial discussion, complete with bank statements and insurance documents spread across the kitchen table. What's all this? Derek asked, loosening his tie as he surveyed the papers. I've been thinking about what you said about our fresh start, I began, keeping my voice light but concerned. If we're really going to move to Costa Rica, I want to make sure we have our finances in order. Derek's expression tightened almost imperceptibly, but he sat down across from me. Of course, what specifically are you worried about? Well, I've been looking at our accounts, and I'm confused about some of these transfers. I pointed to bank statements showing the money Derek had been funneling to offshore accounts. These large withdrawals, what were they for? Investment opportunities, Derek said smoothly. I've been working with a financial advisor to diversify our portfolio before we relocate. That makes sense, I nodded, making sure to sound relieved rather than suspicious. What kind of investments? Real estate, primarily. Property values in Costa Rica are expected to surge over the next few years. We're getting in ahead of the curve. I leaned forward, feigning interest. How much have we invested so far? Derek hesitated for just a moment. About 200,000. I knew from the bank records it was closer to 400,000, but I played along.
Wow, that's our entire savings account.
Not quite, Derek said, his confidence returning. We still have the college fund, and once we sell the house, we'll have plenty of capital to work with. My heart clenched at his casual mention of Ella's college fund, money he'd already stolen. Speaking of the house, When do you think we'll be able to list it?
Soon. Very soon.
Derek reached across the table to squeeze my hand.
I
know this feels overwhelming, but I promise everything is going to work out perfectly.
I trust you completely,
I said, looking directly into his eyes. I just want to understand the timeline. When you say soon, do you mean weeks? Months?
weeks.
Definitely weeks. Derek's enthusiasm was building. In fact, I think we should accelerate our plans. Life is short, Sarah. Ella's death taught us that. We shouldn't waste time grieving when we could be living. The casual way he referenced our daughter's death, while discussing his escape plan, made my stomach turn, but I forced myself to smile. You're right. So what's the next step?
I think you should meet Marissa.
The words hung in the air like a challenge. Derek was studying my reaction carefully, and I knew this was a crucial moment. If I seemed too eager or too resistant, he might become suspicious. Marissa? I asked, tilting my head as if trying to place the name. The realtor I've been working with. She's been incredibly helpful with both the house sale and the Costa Rica properties. I think it would be good for you to meet her, maybe this weekend.
I took a deep breath, as if the idea made me nervous.
I suppose that makes sense. I haven't been ready to think about practical things like selling the house. It still feels too soon.
I know, baby.
But we have to start somewhere. Derek's voice took on the gentle, manipulative tone he'd perfected. Marissa understands what we're going through. She's very compassionate, very professional. I think you'll really like her. Okay, I said slowly, as if I were overcoming reluctance. If you think it's important.
I do.
In fact, why don't I set up a lunch meeting for this Saturday? Somewhere nice, relaxing, just the three of us. 3 blocks away. I knew Agent Williams and her team were recording every word. Derek had just handed us exactly what we needed. A meeting where all 3 conspirators would be together, discussing their plans. That sounds lovely, I agreed.
Where were you thinking?
There's this beautiful restaurant downtown Le Bernardin. Marissa loves it there, and I think you will too. Of course Derek would choose an expensive restaurant for his wife to meet his mistress. The arrogance was breathtaking. After dinner, Derek excused himself to his office to call Marissa and set up the meeting. I cleaned the kitchen slowly, listening as his voice carried down the hallway. She agreed to meet you, he said, his tone excited. Saturday at Le Bernardin. Yes, she seems ready to move forward with everything. No, she doesn't suspect anything. She's completely trusting. There was a long pause as Marissa responded.
About 2 weeks.
I think. Once we have her signature on the property transfer documents, we can finalize everything. The insurance policy is already in place, so timing shouldn't be an issue.
My blood ran cold.
Property transfer documents. Derek was planning to get me to sign away ownership of our house. And then, I know, baby, I can't wait either. Just think. In a month we'll be lying on a beach in Costa Rica, and all of this will be behind us.
Another pause.
Don't worry about Sarah. She won't be a problem much longer. The medication I've been giving her is already making her more compliant, more trusting. By the time she realizes what's happening, it'll be too late. Medication. Derek had been drugging me. I thought back over the past few weeks, remembering how tired I'd been feeling, how my thoughts sometimes seemed foggy. I'd attributed it to grief, but Derek had been poisoning me slowly, making me more manageable. Yes, the heart medication you got from your contact in Nicaragua should work perfectly. Natural causes, no questions asked. And with the life insurance policies in place, we'll have everything we need to disappear. When Derek emerged from his office an hour later, I was curled up on the couch with a cup of tea. Tea I now knew he'd probably tampered with. But I'd only pretended to drink it, pouring most of it into a plant when he wasn't looking. All set for Saturday, he announced cheerfully. Marissa is looking forward to meeting you. I'm nervous, I admitted, which wasn't entirely acting. What if she thinks I'm not ready to move forward? She won't. Trust me, Marissa is very understanding about these situations. She specializes in helping people through major life transitions. Transitions like murder, apparently. Derek, I said, setting down my untouched tea, I love you so much. I'm sorry I've been so resistant to change. Ella's death just It made me want to hold on to everything familiar. I understand completely, Derek said, sitting beside me and pulling me into his arms. But we can't let grief trap us forever. We have to be brave enough to embrace our future. As I sat there in my husband's arms, listening to him talk about our future while planning my murder, I felt a strange sense of power. Derek thought he was manipulating me, controlling me, preparing me for slaughter. But in reality, every word he spoke was another nail in his own coffin. Saturday couldn't come soon enough. Saturday arrived with crisp autumn air that reminded me painfully of the day we'd buried Ella just 2 weeks ago. As I dressed for lunch, selecting a conservative navy dress that made me look appropriately grieving and vulnerable, I caught my reflection in the mirror. The woman staring back at me looked fragile, defeated, exactly what Derek and Marissa expected to see. The wire taped to my chest felt like armor. Derek was unusually attentive as we drove to Lub Ernerdin, pointing out landmarks and chatting about the restaurant's reputation. Marissa discovered this place, he said, his voice warm with affection that should have been reserved for me. She has exquisite taste in everything. I'm sure she does, I replied, letting a note of uncertainty creep into my voice. Derek, what if she doesn't think I'm ready for such a big change? What if she can tell I'm still too emotional about everything? Baby, stop worrying. Derek reached over to squeeze my hand. Marissa understands grief better than anyone. She's helped so many people through difficult transitions. I wondered how many of those transitions had ended in murder. Le Barnardin was exactly the kind of upscale establishment where Derek would want to show off his sophistication. As we entered, I spotted her immediately. Marissa Hotch was even more striking in person than in her photos. Tall, elegant, with perfectly styled dark hair, and a designer outfit that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. She stood to greet us with a smile that was both dazzling and predatory. Sarah, she exclaimed, embracing me as if we were old friends. I'm so sorry for your loss. Derek has told me so much about your beautiful daughter. The casual way she mentioned Ella while planning to murder me made my skin crawl, but I forced myself to accept her embrace. Thank you. That means a lot. As we settled into our table, Marissa immediately took control of the conversation. Derek tells me you're considering a fresh start somewhere warm and peaceful. I think that's incredibly brave of you. It's scary, I admitted, playing my role perfectly. This house has been our home for 8 years. All of Ella's memories are there. I understand completely, Marissa said, her voice dripping with false compassion. But sometimes holding on to painful memories keeps us trapped in our grief. Moving forward isn't about forgetting, it's about healing. She was good, I had to admit. Her manipulation was so smooth, so practiced, that if I didn't know what she really was, I might have found her comforting. Derek jumped in eagerly. Marissa has found some incredible properties in Costa Rica. The climate is perfect, the cost of living is reasonable, and the lifestyle is so much more relaxed than what we have here. It sounds wonderful, I said carefully. But the logistics seem overwhelming. Selling our house, moving our finances, starting over in a foreign country. That's where I come in, Marissa said with a reassuring smile. I specialize in international relocations for people in exactly your situation. I handle everything: property sales, financial transfers, visa arrangements. All you have to do is sign a few papers, and trust me to take care of the details. Derek mentioned you might be able to help expedite the house sale. Absolutely. I have investors who are always looking for properties in your neighborhood. We could have a cash offer within days and close within 2 weeks. Marissa's eyes gleamed with excitement. The key is pricing it aggressively to move quickly. I knew from Derek's emails that aggressively meant selling to Marissa's company at a massive loss, but I nodded as if this sounded reasonable. What about our finances? I asked. Derek mentioned investments, but I don't really understand how international banking works. Marissa leaned forward conspiratorially. The most important thing is protecting your assets from U.S. tax implications. I work with a network of offshore banks that can help you shelter your money while you establish residency in Costa Rica. Shelter it from taxes, I repeated, as if I were trying to understand. Exactly, Perfectly legal, of course, but much more efficient than traditional banking. Marissa's smile was practiced and reassuring. I've helped dozens of clients transition their finances internationally. Derek squeezed my hand under the table. See? I told you Marissa would take care of everything. As lunch progressed, Marissa painted an increasingly detailed picture of our new life in Costa Rica. She described the villa Derek had supposedly chosen, the expat community we'd join, the peaceful lifestyle we'd enjoy. It was a beautiful fantasy, and I could see how someone genuinely grieving might find it irresistible. But then the conversation took a darker turn. There is one thing we need to discuss, Marissa said, her voice dropping to a more serious tone. Health insurance. Costa Rica has excellent health care, but for someone with your recent stress and emotional trauma, it's important to have comprehensive coverage. What do you mean? I asked, though I was beginning to understand exactly what she meant. Grief affects people differently, Marissa explained gently. Sometimes it manifests as physical symptoms, heart problems, high blood pressure, anxiety disorders. I always recommend that my clients have robust life insurance policies in place before relocating, just in case. Derek's face remained perfectly neutral, but I could see the subtle tension in his jaw. This was the moment they'd been building toward. Derek and I already have life insurance, I said slowly. Yes, but those policies might not cover international incidents, Marissa said smoothly. I work with a company that specializes in expat coverage, much more comprehensive, and honestly, the premiums are quite reasonable for someone in your situation. My situation, a widow, relocating internationally, dealing with significant emotional stress. Marissa's voice was gentle, almost motherly. Statistically, people in your circumstances face higher risks, heart attacks, accidents, even suicide. The insurance company recognizes these factors. The cold calculation behind her words was breathtaking. She was discussing my planned murder, as if it were an actuarial table. I think that makes sense, Derek said, his voice carefully neutral. It would give us peace of mind. Exactly. Marissa pulled out a tablet. I took the liberty of getting some quotes. For $1 million policy, the premiums would be quite manageable, and it would give Derek security if anything happened to you during the transition. $1 million policy, on top of the existing policies Derek had already taken out. They were planning to collect multiple payouts from my murder. I suppose that's practical, I said, though my voice wavered slightly, not from fear, but from the effort of containing my rage. Wonderful, I can have the paperwork ready by Monday. Marissa's smile was radiant. Once we have all the insurance and financial arrangements in place, we can move forward with the property sale and your relocation. How quickly could everything be finalized? Derek asked. 2 weeks maximum. I believe in moving swiftly once clients have made their decision. Hesitation only leads to second guessing. As we finished lunch and said our goodbyes, Marissa embraced me again. Sarah, I want you to know how much I admire your courage. Starting over after such a devastating loss takes incredible strength. Thank you, I managed. I'm grateful to have such experienced guidance. Trust me, Marissa said, her eyes locking onto mine with unsettling intensity. I'm going to take very good care of you. As Derek and I drove home, he was practically vibrating with excitement. So, what did you think of her? She's impressive, I said carefully.
Very professional. I knew you'd like her, and those insurance policies she suggested, they really do make sense, don't they? Yes, I agreed. It's good to be practical about these things.
That evening, as Derek made his usual phone call to Marissa, I listened from the kitchen, my blood growing colder with every word. She's completely convinced, Derek said triumphantly. Signed off on all the insurance policies, the accelerated timeline, everything. She has no idea what's coming.
There was a pause as Marissa responded.
2 weeks should be perfect. Once the paperwork is signed and the insurance is active, we can move to the final phase.
Derek's voice dropped to an excited whisper.
I can't believe how smoothly this is all going. 3 blocks away, Agent Williams was recording every single word. That Sunday morning, while Derek slept in after what he'd called a successful business meeting the night before, I met Eric and Agent Williams at a secure FBI facility downtown. The recordings from yesterday's lunch had been analyzed overnight, and the evidence was even more damning than I'd hoped. "Listen to this," Agent Williams said, playing back a section of Derek's phone call from the previous evening. He mentions a contact in Nicaragua and heart medication that will cause natural causes. We ran those details against Marissa's travel records and found something interesting. She pulled up a computer screen showing flight manifests and hotel records. 3 months ago, Marissa stayed at a hotel in Managua that's frequented by medical tourists, people seeking procedures or medications not available in the U.S. But here's the crucial detail. She checked in under the name Maria Hutchinson, the same alias she used for Derek's insurance beneficiary, Eric noted. "Exactly. And our contacts in Nicaragua confirmed that Maria Hutchinson purchased a significant quantity of digoxin from a black market pharmaceutical dealer." My blood chilled.
What's digoxin?
A heart medication that's nearly undetectable in small doses but fatal in larger quantities. It causes cardiac arrest that looks completely natural unless you're specifically testing for it. Agent Williams' expression was grim.
Marissa has been planning your murder for months.
Eric leaned forward. But here's what Derek doesn't know. Marissa has been planning his murder too. While you were at lunch yesterday, I followed up on some financial records I'd been tracking. He pulled out a folder thick with documents. "Remember how I told you Marissa changed Derek's company life insurance beneficiary to Maria Hutchinson? Well, she also took out 3 additional policies on Derek through different companies, all under various aliases." "How much total?" I asked. $4.8 million. Agent Williams whistled low. "She's planning to collect nearly $5 million from Derek's death alone. Combined with your policies and the house sale, she's looking at close to $7 million total. But she needs both of us dead to collect everything," I said, the pieces falling into place. "Precisely. Our working theory is that she'll kill you first, wait for Derek to grieve appropriately, then eliminate him during your supposed healing trip to Costa Rica. 2 tragic accidents, maximum payout, clean escape." Eric pulled out another document that made my stomach drop. "This is a marriage certificate. Marissa married Derek in Vegas 3 weeks ago." "That's impossible," I said immediately. "Derek and I are still married." "Not according to this divorce decree," Agent Williams said quietly, sliding another paper across the table. "Filed in Nevada, under an expedited process. Derek claimed you'd abandoned the marriage due to mental illness following your daughter's death." The room spun around me. "He divorced me, without my knowledge. It's fraud, of course, but it was legal enough to allow him to marry Marissa, which means she's now his legal heir and would inherit everything even without the insurance policies." I stared at the documents, rage building in my chest like a physical force. Derek hadn't just been planning to murder me, he'd already erased our marriage, our life together, our family. In his mind, I was already dead. "There's more," Eric said gently. "We found email exchanges between Derek and Marissa about Ella."
What about Ella?
My voice was barely a whisper. Agent Williams hesitated. "Mrs. Williams, this is going to be very difficult to hear." "Tell me." Eric opened his laptop and turned the screen toward me. "These are emails from when Ella was still alive, during her treatment. The first email was from Derek to Marissa, dated 6 months ago. The doctors say it could go either way. Part of me knows I should be devastated, but honestly, if she doesn't make it, it would solve a lot of problems. Sarah would be vulnerable, easier to manipulate, and there wouldn't be any custody issues to complicate our plans." My hands began to shake as I read Marissa's response. "I understand completely. Children complicate everything, especially international relocations. If nature takes its course, we should view it as an opportunity rather than a tragedy." The next email was even worse. Derek had written, "Sarah is spending every moment at the hospital. She's exhausted, emotional, not paying attention to finances or legal matters. I've been able to move a lot of money without her noticing. If Ella dies, Sarah will be so devastated that I could probably get her to sign anything." Marissa's reply was brief but chilling. "Grief makes people very cooperative and very careless." I pushed back from the table, unable to read anymore. They were hoping she would die. They were planning my murder while hoping my daughter would die. Agent Williams placed a gentle hand on my shoulder. I'm so sorry, Sarah, but this gives us exactly what we need. These emails, combined with the insurance fraud and the recorded conversations, provide overwhelming evidence of premeditated murder. How could I have been so blind? I whispered. How could I not have seen what kind of monster I was married to? Because you loved your daughter, and you trusted your husband, Eric said quietly. Marissa specializes in targeting people who are emotionally compromised. She knew exactly how to exploit Derek's worst impulses. Agent Williams pulled out a new set of documents. But here's our secret advantage. Derek and Marissa don't know we have any of this. They think they're in complete control, which makes them careless. What do you mean? Tomorrow Derek is supposed to take you to sign the life insurance papers Marissa mentioned. We're going to let that meeting happen, but we'll have agents positioned throughout the building. We want to record them explaining the policy details, the beneficiaries, everything. Isn't that dangerous? We'll have you covered every second. But more importantly, we need Derek to believe he's succeeded in getting you to sign those papers, because once he thinks you're locked into the insurance policies, he'll move to the final phase. I finished. Exactly, and that's when we'll arrest them both. Eric leaned forward with intensity. Sarah, I need you to understand something. Tomorrow isn't just about gathering evidence. Derek and Marissa are going to try to get you to sign documents that will make your murder profitable for them. The insurance applications, property transfers, maybe even a new will. How do I sign them without actually making them valid? Agent Williams smiled grimly. You're going to sign them with a special pen we'll provide. The ink will appear normal but will completely disappear within 24 hours. The documents will look legitimate long enough for Derek and Marissa to incriminate themselves. But they'll be worthless legally. And after they think I've signed everything, we estimate they'll move to kill you within 48 hours. They can't risk you changing your mind or becoming suspicious. But we'll be monitoring everything. Your house, your movements, even your vital signs through a device we'll implant under your skin. The weight of what they were asking hit me fully. You want me to let them try to murder me? We want to catch them in the act with irrefutable evidence, Agent Williams corrected. But Sarah, I won't lie to you, there are risks. If something goes wrong, if they change their timeline or their method, I understand, I said, thinking of Ella's grave, of Derek's celebration while I buried our daughter, of the emails hoping she would die. I want to do it. I want to end this. Eric reached across the table and took my hand. Are you sure? There's no going back once we set this in motion. I looked at the emails on the laptop screen, at the evidence of Derek and Marissa's complete lack of humanity. They used my daughter's death as a business opportunity. They celebrated while she suffered. They're not just planning to murder me, they've already murdered my family, my marriage, everything I thought was real. I stood up, my resolve crystallizing into something harder than steel. Let's destroy them. Agent Williams nodded with approval. Then tomorrow we spring the trap. Monday morning arrived with unseasonable warmth, as if the universe were mocking the coldness of what was about to unfold. I stood in my bathroom, staring at my reflection while Agent Williams' medical technician made final adjustments to the nearly invisible monitoring device they'd implanted under my skin the night before. The small incision was barely noticeable, but I could feel the device's presence, a reminder that my life was now being monitored by federal agents who were betting everything on their ability to save me when Derek made his move. Final equipment check, Agent Williams said through my earpiece, her voice crystal clear despite the tiny receiver hidden in my ear canal. Can you hear me clearly? Yes, I whispered, testing my own microphone embedded in what looked like a simple necklace pendant. The disappearing ink pen is in your purse, disguised as a regular ballpoint. Remember, use only that pen for signatures today. The documents will look completely legitimate until the ink vanishes tonight. I nodded to my reflection, then applied makeup with steady hands. Today I needed to look like a grieving widow, ready to sign away her future, not a woman preparing to destroy the monsters who'd planned her murder. Derek was unusually tender over breakfast, bringing me coffee in bed, and stroking my hair as if I were a beloved pet rather than his intended victim. "Are you nervous about today?" he asked, his voice dripping with false concern. "A little," I admitted, which was entirely true. "It's such a big step. Once I sign those papers, there's no going back to grief, to pain, to living in the past," Derek agreed, kissing my forehead. "Today marks the beginning of our real life together." The irony was suffocating. Derek thought today marked the beginning of our new life, when in reality, it marked the end of his. The insurance office was located in a gleaming downtown building that reeked of corporate success. As we rode the elevator to the 15th floor, Derek held my hand with what seemed like genuine affection. If I hadn't known he was planning my murder, I might have been touched by his attentiveness. "Mr. and Mrs. Williams," the receptionist greeted us with professional warmth. "Miss Hotch is waiting for you in conference room A." Marissa looked radiant in a sharp business suit, her smile bright enough to light up the room. She embraced me as if we were old friends, her perfume expensive and cloying. "Sarah, darling, you look wonderful. Are you ready to start your new adventure?" "As ready as I'll ever be," I replied, letting a tremor of uncertainty color my voice. The conference room was designed to impress, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, and a massive mahogany table surrounded by leather chairs. Several other people were already seated, insurance agents, notaries, and what appeared to be legal representatives. The scene was meticulously orchestrated to look legitimate and reassuring. "I've taken the liberty of preparing all the necessary documents," Marissa announced, spreading papers across the table like a dealer arranging cards. "Life insurance policies, property transfer agreements, financial power of attorney documents, everything we discussed." Agent Williams' voice crackled softly in my ear. "We're recording everything. Stay calm and let them explain each document. We need their intent on record." Derek sat beside me, his hand resting possessively on my shoulder. "Marissa has been incredible, organizing all of this. I don't know what we would have done without her expertise." "It's my pleasure," Marissa purred. "I believe in taking care of my clients completely." As we began reviewing the documents, the scope of their scheme became even more apparent. The life insurance policy wasn't just for $1 million, it was structured with multiple riders and clauses that would bring the total payout to nearly $2 million. The property transfer agreement didn't just sell our house to Marissa's company, it transferred ownership of all our assets, including investments and savings accounts I didn't even know Derek had accessed. "This section here," Marissa pointed to a dense paragraph of legal text, "ensures that all financial obligations transfer cleanly to the new accounts we've established in Costa Rica, very tax efficient." "What she means," Derek added helpfully, "is that we won't have to worry about any U.S. financial entanglements once we relocate." I knew what they really meant. Once I was dead, Derek wouldn't have to worry about anyone tracking the stolen money. The most chilling document was disguised as a simple medical directive. "This ensures that if anything happens to you during our transition period, illness, accident, anything unexpected, Derek has complete authority to make decisions about your care and your assets." "Happens to me?" I asked, feigning confusion. "Well, international relocation can be stressful," Marissa explained gently. "Some people experience anxiety, depression, even physical health issues. This just ensures that Derek can act quickly if you need medical attention." In my earpiece, Agent Williams whispered, "They're setting up legal justification for Derek to pull the plug if you survive their first murder attempt." Derek squeezed my hand reassuringly. "It's just a precaution, baby. We want to make sure you're protected." As I reviewed each document, using the special pen Agent Williams had provided, I marveled at the thoroughness of their planning. Every signature I made today would legally transfer my entire life to Derek and Marissa, my house, my money, my medical decisions, even my death benefits. They had crafted the perfect legal framework for my murder. "One final document," Marissa said, sliding a paper across the table with obvious satisfaction. "This is a will update, ensuring that Derek inherits everything cleanly, without probate delays." The will was remarkably detailed, leaving specific instructions for my funeral arrangements, cremation, no service, minimal expense, and the disposition of my personal belongings. Donate everything to charity immediately. They had planned not just my death, but my complete erasure from the world. I notice there's no mention of Ella's things, I said, my voice carefully neutral. Derek and Marissa exchanged a quick glance. We thought it might be too painful for Derek to keep those reminders, Marissa said smoothly. Sometimes it's healthier to let go completely. They wanted to erase Ella too, to eliminate any trace of the family Derek was abandoning. As I signed the final document, Derek's excitement was palpable. He kept checking his watch, as if he had somewhere important to be. How quickly do these policies take effect? He asked Marissa. Immediately upon signing and notarization, she replied. The coverage begins the moment Sarah's signature is witnessed. Derek's smile was radiant. Perfect. Just perfect. After the notaries had finished their work and the documents were filed, Marissa suggested we celebrate with champagne. To new beginnings, she toasted, raising her glass. To new beginnings, Derek echoed, his eyes gleaming with anticipation. I lifted my glass, thinking of Eric's destroyed life, of Ella's grave, of all the victims Marissa had left in her wake. To getting exactly what we deserve. As we left the building, Derek was practically vibrating with excitement. How do you feel? He asked, as we reached the car. Different, I said honestly. Like I've crossed a line I can never uncross. That's exactly right, Derek said, starting the engine. Tonight, we should have a quiet dinner at home. Just the two of us. Something simple and peaceful. In my earpiece, Agent Williams' voice was urgent. He's accelerating the timeline. We estimate you have less than 12 hours. Are you ready? I looked at Derek, who was humming softly as he drove. Already planning my final meal. I'm ready, I whispered. Tonight, one way or another, this would all be over. That evening, Derek prepared what he called a celebration dinner with unusual care. I watched from the living room as he moved around our kitchen, humming softly while he seasoned the salmon and uncorked a bottle of expensive wine. To any observer, he looked like a loving husband preparing a romantic meal for his grieving wife. But I knew better. Derek was preparing my last supper. The table looks beautiful, I said, entering the dining room where he'd set our finest china and lit candles. Fresh flowers, lilies, the same ones from Ella's funeral, adorned the centerpiece. The symbolism wasn't lost on me. Only the best for tonight, Derek replied, his smile warm and genuine seeming. We're celebrating the beginning of our new life together. Agent Williams' voice crackled softly in my earpiece. We have visual confirmation. Derek accessed a small vial from his jacket pocket while in the kitchen. The substance appears to match the digoxin profile. I sat across from Derek, accepting the wine glass he offered with a trembling smile. I'm still nervous about everything, I said, which was entirely true, though not for the reasons Derek believed. That's natural, he assured me, raising his glass. Change is always frightening, but think about where we'll be in a month. Sunshine, beaches, no responsibilities, no painful memories. To Ella, I said suddenly, lifting my glass. She would have wanted us to be happy. Derek's expression flickered for just a moment, surprise, perhaps even guilt, before he recovered. To Ella he agreed, though his voice sounded strained. As we ate, Derek was unusually chatty, regaling me with stories about Costa Rica's climate and culture, the expat communities we'd join, the adventures we'd have. His enthusiasm was infectious, and I found myself almost believing in the fantasy he was weaving. Almost. You seem different tonight, I observed, studying his face. More relaxed than you've been in months. I feel different, Derek admitted. Like a weight has been lifted off my shoulders. For the first time since Ella got sick, I feel like we have a real future ahead of us. The casual cruelty of his words, using our daughter's illness as a marker for when our marriage became inconvenient for him, made my stomach turn. But I maintained my loving wife facade. The wine is making me lightheaded, I said, setting down my glass after taking only a small sip. Through my earpiece, Agent Williams had warned me that Derek might have poisoned both the wine and the food. Maybe I should eat something first. Good idea, Derek said, watching me carefully as I took a bite of salmon. You've barely been eating lately. You need to keep your strength up. Keep my strength up so I'd be healthy enough for murder, he meant. Derek, I said, reaching across the table to take his hand. "There's something I need to tell you." His body went rigid, though his smile remained fixed. "What is it, baby?" "I know about Marissa." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Derek's wine glass stopped halfway to his lips, his face draining of color. For several heartbeats, neither of us moved. "What do you mean?" he asked. Finally, his voice carefully controlled. "I know she's not just your realtor," I continued, my voice steady despite the hammering of my heart. "I know you've been having an affair." Derek set down his glass with deliberate precision. "Sarah, I'm not finished." I squeezed his hand, feeling him flinch at my touch. "I know about the insurance policies. I know about the money you've been moving. I know about Costa Rica." Derek's mask was slipping, revealing the calculating stranger beneath. "How long have you known?" "Long enough," I said simply. In my earpiece, Agent Williams's voice was urgent. "Sarah, you're off script. We need Derek to incriminate himself further." Before I pulled out my phone and set it on the table between us, the voice recording app clearly visible and running. Derek stared at it as if it were a loaded gun. "Everything we've said tonight has been recorded," I said, my voice growing stronger with each word, "including your confession about wanting to start fresh, about the weight being lifted off your shoulders since Ella got sick." Derek's face transformed completely, the loving husband disappearing entirely. What remained was cold, calculating, and utterly without remorse. "You stupid bitch," he snarled, lunging for my phone. But I was faster, snatching it away and standing up from the table. "Did you really think I wouldn't figure it out? Did you think I was that broken, that pathetic?" Derek stood too, his hands clenched into fists. "You have no idea what you're doing. You're ruining everything." "I'm stopping a murder," I said, backing toward the living room. "My murder." Derek's laugh was cold and humorless as he advanced on me, his hands outstretched toward my phone. "You think you're so clever, don't you? Recording our conversation like some amateur detective." "Stay back," I warned, holding the phone out of his reach. "The FBI is listening to every word you say." "The FBI?" Derek's expression shifted from anger to disbelief. "You're bluffing. You don't have the backbone for something like that." "You're right," I said, continuing to back toward the living room. "The old Sarah, the one who trusted you, who made excuses for your absences, who protected your reputation at our daughter's funeral, she didn't have the backbone. But you killed her the day you chose Marissa over Ella." Derek's face contorted with rage. "Don't you dare bring Ella into this. Everything I did was for our future." "Our future?" I let out a bitter laugh. "You mean your future with Marissa? The future you've been planning since before our daughter was even dead." In my earpiece, Agent Williams's voice was urgent. "Sarah, agents are moving into position. Keep him talking, but don't let him get close enough to hurt you." Derek lunged forward, grabbing for my wrist. "Give me that phone." I jerked backward, but he was faster than I expected. His fingers closed around my wrist with crushing force, and I cried out as the phone clattered to the floor. "There," Derek panted, towering over me. "No more recording, no more games." But what Derek didn't know was that the phone recording was just theatrics. The real surveillance was coming from the devices hidden throughout our house, from the wire I was wearing, from the medical monitor tracking my vital signs. Every word, every violent action was being documented. "You think destroying that phone changes anything?" I asked, rubbing my bruised wrist. "You think the evidence just disappears?" Derek's eyes narrowed. "What evidence?" "A grieving widow's paranoid delusions. That's all anyone will see. They'll see the insurance policies you made me sign with disappearing ink," I said, watching his face change. "They'll see the money you stole from Ella's college fund. They'll see the emails where you and Marissa hoped our daughter would die." Derek went completely still. "That's impossible. The documents were notarized. The insurance is active. The ink disappears in 24 hours, I said, taking satisfaction in his growing panic. "Those policies are worthless. The property transfers are void. Your entire plan is collapsing." "You're lying," Derek said, but his voice wavered with uncertainty. "Check your phone," I challenged. "Call Marissa. See how long it takes her to figure out she's not getting a dime." Derek fumbled for his phone with shaking hands, speed dialing Marissa's number. I could hear her voice on the other end, bright and cheerful. "Darling, how did the dinner go? Is it done?" "There's a problem," Derek said, his voice tight with panic. "Sarah knows about everything." The silence on the other end was deafening. Then Marissa's voice returned, sharp and cold. "How much does she know?" "Everything. The insurance, the money, the plan. She says the documents are worthless, that the ink disappears." "That's impossible," Marissa snapped. "I watched her sign them myself. She's recording conversations." She mentioned the FBI. Another long silence. "Then kill her. Now make it look like an accident, a break-in gone wrong. I'll handle the rest." Derek looked at me with new calculation, his panic crystallizing into deadly purpose. "Marissa says." "I heard what Marissa says," I interrupted. "The question is, are you really ready to add murder to your list of crimes? Because once you cross that line, Derek, there's no going back." "There's already no going back," Derek said, his voice eerily calm now. "You've destroyed everything." He moved toward the kitchen, and I knew he was going for a knife. This was the moment Agent Williams had warned me about, the moment when cornered predators became most dangerous. "Derek, stop," I called after him. "Think about what you're doing. Think about Ella. Is this really what you want her memory to be? Their father as a murderer?" He turned back to me, his face a mask of cold fury. "Ella's dead. She doesn't get a vote anymore." "Hugh?" That's when I heard it, the sound of car doors slamming outside, of heavy footsteps on our front porch. Derek heard it too, his head snapping toward the front door. "Sarah Williams, this is the FBI." Agent Williams' voice boomed from outside. "Hugh? Open the door." Derek's face went white with terror. "You set me up. This whole thing was a setup." "Yes," I said simply. "It was. Just like you set up Ella's death as an opportunity. Just like you set up my murder as your escape plan." The front door burst open, and federal agents poured into our living room, weapons drawn. "Derek Williams, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, insurance fraud, and embezzlement," Agent Williams announced as officers surrounded him. Derek looked between the agents and me, his expression a mixture of rage, disbelief, and defeat. "This isn't over," he snarled, as they cuffed his hands behind his back. "Yes, it is," I said quietly. "It's completely over." As Derek was led away in handcuffs, Agent Williams immediately coordinated the arrest of Marissa Hotch. Through my earpiece, I could hear the radio chatter as teams surrounded the luxury hotel where she was staying, probably celebrating what she thought was my imminent murder. "Marissa Hotch, FBI, open the door," came the voice through the radio, followed by the sound of splintering wood. "Suspect is in custody." I sank into my living room chair, suddenly exhausted as the adrenaline began to fade. Agent Williams sat across from me, her expression a mixture of satisfaction and concern. "Are you injured?" she asked, noting the red marks on my wrist where Derek had grabbed me. "Nothing serious," I said, though my hands were shaking now that the immediate danger had passed. "Did you get everything you needed?" "More than enough." Agent Williams pulled out a tablet, scrolling through what appeared to be a comprehensive evidence file. "Derek's phone call with Marissa alone is sufficient for conspiracy to commit murder charges. Her direct instruction to kill her now removes any doubt about intent." Eric arrived 20 minutes later, his face pale with worry. "Sarah, are you okay?" When I heard on the radio that they'd moved in early, "I'm fine," I assured him, though I wasn't entirely sure that was true. "It's over, Eric. They're both in custody." Agent Williams continued organizing evidence on her tablet. "The scope of this case is remarkable. Between Derek's financial crimes and Marissa's serial fraud operation, we're looking at federal charges that could put them both away for life." She showed me a document that made my blood run cold. "We found this in Marissa's hotel room, a detailed timeline for your murder and Derek's. You were scheduled to die tonight from accidental digoxin poisoning. Derek was supposed to die in Costa Rica 3 weeks later from a hiking accident. She was planning to kill him too, within a month of killing you. The insurance payouts would have totaled over $7 million. Agent Williams flipped to another screen. But here's what's really disturbing. We found evidence of at least 6 other victims over the past 5 years. Marissa has been operating this scheme much longer than we realized. Eric leaned forward, studying the tablet. 6 other victims. All dead? 3 dead. 3 financially ruined and facing criminal charges for fraud they didn't commit. Marissa's been perfecting her method for years. Agent Williams' voice was grim. Derek wasn't just her partner. He was going to be her biggest score yet. I thought about the emails where Derek and Marissa had hoped for Ella's death, and felt no sympathy for what would have been his fate. How soon will they go to trial? Given the strength of our evidence, I expect plea negotiations to begin within days. We have recordings of them discussing murder, documented financial fraud, and now physical evidence of the poison Marissa purchased. Agent Williams closed the tablet. This is one of the most airtight cases I've ever worked. Over the next hour, FBI technicians processed our house as a crime scene, collecting the poisoned wine and food Derek had prepared, documenting the surveillance equipment, and photographing everything. I watched them work with a strange sense of detachment, as if I were observing someone else's life being dismantled and catalogued. Mrs. Williams, Agent Williams said as the technicians finished their work, I need to ask, are you sure you're emotionally prepared for what comes next? The media attention, the trial proceedings having to relive all of this in court? I looked around our living room, at the family photos that Derek had planned to erase, at Ella's toys still scattered in the corner where I'd left them as a memorial. Agent Williams, they turned my daughter's death into a business opportunity. They used my grief as a weapon against me. Whatever comes next can't be worse than what I've already survived. Eric nodded in agreement. Sarah's stronger than either of them ever realized. That's why their plan failed. As the FBI team prepared to leave, Agent Williams handed me a business card. My direct number. If you need anything, protection, counseling resources, updates on the case, call me immediately. Thank you, I said, meaning it completely, for believing me, for helping me, for making sure they can't hurt anyone else. Thank you for having the courage to see this through. Without your cooperation, Derek and Marissa would have gotten away with murder. Agent Williams paused at the door. One more thing, we've frozen all of their assets, including the money Derek stole from your accounts. You should have access to your funds again within a few days. After everyone left, Eric and I sat in the quiet house, both of us struggling to process what had just happened. It's really over, Eric said finally. They're both in custody, the evidence is overwhelming, and they can't hurt anyone else. It's over, I agreed, though part of me still couldn't quite believe it. For so long, I had felt powerless, manipulated, one step behind Derek's schemes. Now suddenly, justice had been served with startling swiftness. I walked to Ella's photo on the mantel, touching the frame gently. We did it, baby girl, I whispered. Daddy and his girlfriend won't hurt anyone else. They'll pay for what they did to our family. For the first time since Ella's diagnosis, I felt truly at peace. 3 days later, Agent Williams called with news that shattered what I thought I knew about Derek and Marissa's crimes. I was sitting in my kitchen, finally able to drink coffee without wondering if it was poisoned, when she asked if she could come over immediately. There's something we discovered in Marissa's files that you need to know, she said, her voice unusually tense. It changes everything about this case. When Agent Williams arrived, she carried a thick manila folder and wore the expression of someone about to deliver devastating news. Eric had driven over as well, sensing from my phone call that whatever this was, I would need support. Sarah, what I'm about to show you is going to be very difficult, Agent Williams began, setting the folder on my kitchen table. When we searched Marissa's apartment, we found detailed records she'd kept on all her victims, including information about you and Derek that goes back much further than we realized. She opened the folder to reveal what looked like a comprehensive dossier on our family. Photos of Derek, Ella, and me dating back years, financial records, medical information, even copies of Ella's school reports and medical test results. Marissa has been monitoring your family for 3 years, Agent Williams said quietly. Since before Ella was even diagnosed, my blood chilled. What do you mean monitoring us? Sarek leaned forward, studying the documents. These photos, some of these are from inside your house. How did she get inside your house? Agent Williams pulled out a set of photographs that made my stomach lurch. They showed Ella playing in her bedroom, Derek in his office, me cooking dinner, all taken from angles that suggested hidden cameras had been installed in our home. We believe Marissa targeted your family specifically because of Derek's financial situation and Ella's medical history. She'd been planning this operation for years, waiting for the right moment to approach Derek. But how did she know about Ella's medical history before the diagnosis? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Agent Williams pulled out another document that made the room spin around me. Because Marissa Hotch isn't just a financial predator, she's a former medical technician who was fired from Children's Hospital for accessing patient records without authorization. The words hit me like a physical blow. Children's Hospital, that's where Ella was treated. Yes, and according to these records, Marissa had been monitoring Ella's health screenings for over a year before her leukemia diagnosis. She knew Ella was developing cancer before you did. Eric's face went pale. You're saying she knew Ella was going to get sick? We're saying she may have caused Ella to get sick. Agent Williams pulled out a medical report that made my vision blur. We found evidence that Marissa had access to the hospital's treatment areas. These documents suggest she may have exposed Ella to carcinogenic substances during routine visits. The kitchen fell silent, except for the sound of my ragged breathing. You're telling me that Marissa gave my daughter cancer? We're still investigating, but the evidence is strongly suggestive. Marissa identified your family as ideal targets: high income, substantial assets, and a child whose health she could manipulate to create the emotional vulnerability she needed to control Derek. I stared at the photos of my daughter, innocent and healthy, unknowingly being watched by a monster who was planning to destroy our entire family. She poisoned Ella to get to Derek. The timeline supports that theory. Ella's first symptoms appeared approximately 6 months after Derek had a significant increase in his life insurance coverage that Marissa, as an insurance agent, would have been aware of. Eric reached across the table to take my hand. Sarah, this is monstrous. This is beyond anything we imagined. Agent Williams continued with clinical precision. What's more, we found correspondence between Marissa and Derek dating back 18 months before Ella's diagnosis. Derek wasn't an innocent victim who got seduced during a vulnerable time. He was a willing partner from the beginning. She showed me printed emails that made my heart stop. Messages between Derek and Marissa discussing accelerating the timeline and creating the right conditions for their plan. References to Ella as the complication that needs to be resolved. Derek knew, I whispered. He knew what she was doing to Ella. Worse than that, he approved it. Look at this message from Derek to Marissa, dated 3 months before Ella's diagnosis. Do whatever you need to do. I trust your expertise. The sooner this happens, the sooner we can be together. The folder slipped from my numb fingers, scattering photographs and documents across the floor. Images of my daughter, my husband, my life, all of it orchestrated by 2 monsters who had used my child as a pawn in their murderous game. They gave her cancer, I said, the words feeling surreal even as I spoke them. They deliberately gave my little girl cancer, so they could steal our money and start a new life together. Sarah, Eric said gently, this isn't your fault. You couldn't have known. But I was barely hearing him. I was thinking about all those nights I'd sat by Ella's hospital bed, holding her hand as she fought for her life, while Derek made excuses about work stress and delayed business trips. He hadn't been avoiding the hospital because he couldn't handle watching her suffer. He'd been avoiding it because he was guilty of causing her suffering. How long have they been planning to kill me? I asked Agent Williams. According to these documents, since before Ella's diagnosis. You were always going to die, Sarah. Ella's illness was just the method they chose to make you vulnerable enough to manipulate. I looked at the scattered photos of my daughter, my beautiful, innocent daughter, who had trusted everyone around her, including the man who had helped poison her, and the father who had sold her life for money. I want them to pay for everything, I said, my voice steady despite the tears streaming down my face. Not just for trying to kill me, for what they did to Ella. For every moment of pain she suffered because of their greed. They will, Agent Williams promised. This evidence changes the charges from attempted murder to actual murder. They killed your daughter, Sarah. And now, we can prove it. The courtroom was packed the day Derek and Marissa were arraigned on first-degree murder charges. I sat in the front row, flanked by Eric and Agent Williams, watching as the two people who had destroyed my family were led in wearing orange jumpsuits and shackles. Derek wouldn't meet my eyes, but Marissa stared at me with cold calculation, as if she were still trying to figure out how her perfect plan had unraveled. The state charges Marissa Hotch and Derek Williams with the premeditated murder of Ella Rose Williams, age 7, the prosecutor announced, her voice echoing through the silent courtroom. Additional charges include conspiracy to commit murder, aggravated assault with intent to kill, insurance fraud, embezzlement and racketeering. Derek's attorney immediately requested a plea conference, but Marissa's lawyer entered a not guilty plea with obvious confidence. Even facing overwhelming evidence, Marissa believed she could manipulate her way out of consequences. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed around me as I made my way to the car. Mrs. Williams, how does it feel to know your husband planned your murder? What would you say to other families dealing with similar betrayals? Do you think the death penalty is appropriate in this case? I stopped walking and turned to face the cameras. For months, I had been silent, playing the grieving widow while Derek and Marissa orchestrated my destruction. Now it was time to speak. My daughter Ella was 7 years old when Marissa Hotch deliberately gave her cancer, I said clearly, my voice carrying across the courthouse steps. For 2 years we watched our little girl fight for her life while the woman who poisoned her and the father who approved it planned to profit from her death. The crowd of reporters went completely silent. They didn't just plan to steal our money and disappear. They murdered my child to create the perfect emotional cover for financial fraud and my eventual murder. They turned a dying child's hospital room into a crime scene. Derek's attorney tried to push through the crowd, probably hoping to stop me from speaking, but I continued. Derek Williams is not a grieving father. He is a man who sold his daughter's life for $7 million. Marissa Hotch is not a financial advisor. She is a serial killer who specializes in destroying families from the inside out. Behind me, Agent Williams nodded approvingly. Everything I was saying had been cleared through the prosecutor's office, designed to put maximum public pressure on both defendants. 3 weeks later, Derek cracked. His attorney called Agent Williams on a Tuesday morning, requesting an immediate plea conference. Derek was willing to testify against Marissa in exchange for life imprisonment without parole instead of the death penalty the state was seeking. He's terrified of her, Agent Williams explained to me over coffee. Apparently, Marissa has been sending him messages through other inmates, threatening to have him killed if he talks. But he's realized that cooperating with us is his only chance of surviving long enough to serve his sentence. What exactly is he offering to tell us? Everything. The full details of how they induced Ella's cancer, the complete list of Marissa's previous victims, the locations of assets she's hidden internationally. He's even willing to wear a wire and get Marissa to confess on tape. I stared out the window, thinking about my daughter's final days, how she'd asked me why Daddy seemed so sad whenever he visited. And in exchange he gets to live in a maximum security prison, in solitary confinement for his own protection, for the rest of his natural life. He'll never see sunlight again except through a window. It wasn't the death penalty, but it was something. What about Marissa? If Derek's testimony is as comprehensive as he claims, we'll have enough evidence to convict her on multiple counts of first-degree murder. She'll face the death penalty for killing Ella, and additional life sentences for her other victims. 2 days later, Derek's cooperation began. Wearing a wire, he met with Marissa in the county jail's visitation room, supposedly to discuss their legal strategy. What happened instead was a complete confession caught on tape. "You're panicking," Marissa said calmly, when Derek expressed fear about the charges. "They can't prove we gave the child cancer. Medical malpractice at worst. Marissa, they have documentation of your hospital access, your purchase of carcinogenic materials, which can be explained away. I was conducting legitimate medical research." Derek's voice shook as he pushed forward. "They know about the other families. James Peterson, David Chen, all of them. Those cases are completely unrelated. Different methodologies, different outcomes." Marissa's confidence was chilling. "Derek, you need to stay calm. I've been doing this for 8 years. I know how to handle law enforcement. 8 years. Derek's surprise was audible. You told me there were only a few others. Marissa's laugh was cold. Darling, there have been 15 families. Ella was just the most profitable target. 15 families. 15 children who had potentially been murdered by this monster. When Agent Williams played me the recording, I felt a strange sense of completion. Marissa had finally revealed the full scope of her crimes, and Derek had provided the testimony that would ensure her destruction. How many death sentences can one person receive? I asked. In theory, 15. In practice, one is enough. Agent Williams smiled grimly. Marissa Hotch is never going to hurt another family, that I can promise you. The trial lasted 6 weeks, with testimony so horrific that several jurors wept openly in the courtroom. Derek, true to his plea agreement, testified against Marissa with clinical precision, detailing how they had systematically murdered children to manipulate their families. His voice never wavered as he described purchasing carcinogenic compounds, planning Ella's exposure timeline, and calculating the optimal moment to begin their insurance fraud. But it was the testimony of other survivors that truly revealed the scope of Marissa's operation. James Peterson took the stand, his voice breaking as he described, watching his wife die of cancer, while Marissa comforted him, and slowly drained his accounts. She brought me soup, he said, tears streaming down his face. She held my hand at the funeral, all while she was the one who had poisoned my wife. David Chen testified about losing his 3 children to a custody battle after Marissa destroyed his finances and reputation. My kids won't speak to me, he said quietly. They think their father is a criminal, because that's what she made me look like. One by one, the surviving family members of Marissa's 15 victims told their stories. Parents who had watched their children die, not knowing they were being murdered for insurance money. Spouses who had been emotionally manipulated while their partners were slowly poisoned. Children who had grown up without parents, never knowing their deaths had been planned and executed by someone they trusted. Eric testified about his own financial destruction, but also about the investigation that had finally stopped Marissa's killing spree. She tried to destroy my life completely, he said, looking directly at Marissa. But watching her get caught, seeing justice finally served, it was worth every penny she stole. Throughout the trial, Marissa maintained her innocence with chilling composure. She sat at the defense table taking notes, occasionally smiling at testimony that contradicted her story, as if this were an intellectual exercise rather than a murder trial. The prosecution's closing argument was devastating. Marissa Hotch didn't just kill children for money, the prosecutor declared. She perfected the art of family annihilation. She would identify vulnerable families, murder their children to create emotional chaos, then systematically destroy the survivors financially and psychologically. She turned grief into a weapon and wielded it with surgical precision. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours. Guilty on all counts, the forewoman announced. First-degree murder, conspiracy, racketeering, fraud, guilty on every single charge. Marissa's face remained impassive as the judge scheduled her sentencing hearing, but I saw her hands clench into fists under the table. For the first time, her perfect composure cracked slightly. Outside the courthouse, reporters asked me how I felt about the verdict. Justice for Ella, I said simply. Justice for all the children Marissa murdered, and all the families she destroyed. 2 weeks later, Marissa Hotch was sentenced to death by lethal injection. Derek received life in prison without possibility of parole, to be served in solitary confinement for his own protection. As the judge read the sentences, I held Eric's hand and thought about Ella's bright smile, her infectious laughter, her dreams of becoming a veterinarian. Marissa and Derek had stolen all of that for money, but they could never steal my memories, or the love that would keep Ella alive in my heart forever. Justice is served, I whispered, and for the first time since my daughter's death, I felt truly at peace. 5 years have passed since Derek and Marissa were sentenced, and I'm standing in the children's cancer ward at the same hospital where Ella was treated. But this time, I'm here by choice, not desperation. The Ella Rose Foundation has just opened its 3rd family support center, providing housing and emotional support for families whose children are fighting cancer. Mrs. Williams, Dr. Martinez, the head of pediatric oncology, approaches with a warm smile. The Morrison family wanted to thank you personally for the apartment. Having a place to stay near the hospital has made all the difference during their son's treatment. I nod, watching through the window as children play in the newly renovated play area, their laughter filling spaces that once echoed with my own grief. Ella would have loved seeing other kids get better, I say softly. Eric joins me at the window, now the foundation's director of operations. We've grown close over these years, bonded by our shared survival and commitment to ensuring no other families suffer what we endured. The FBI called, he says quietly. Marissa's execution is scheduled for next month. I feel nothing at this news, no satisfaction, no sadness, just emptiness, where once there was rage. And Derek, still in solitary, still trying to appeal his sentence, Eric's voice carries the same emotional distance I feel. Agent Williams says he asks about you sometimes. What does he ask? Whether you've remarried, whether you're happy. Eric pauses. Whether you've forgiven him. I consider this as I watch a little girl with a bright pink headscarf hug her parents in the hallway. She reminds me of Ella, the same stubborn chin, the same fearless smile. I haven't forgiven him, I say finally, but I've moved past him. There's a difference. The foundation has grown beyond anything I initially imagined. We provide financial assistance for families facing medical bankruptcy, housing for those who must relocate for treatment, and counseling for parents, navigating the impossible terrain of childhood cancer. Every family we help is a victory against the darkness Derek and Marissa tried to create. Sarah, Eric says, I have something to tell you. I turn to face him, noting the nervous energy in his expression. I've been thinking about what you said last month, about building a life instead of just surviving one. He takes my hand gently. I know we both have complicated histories, and I know Ella will always be the most important part of your heart. But I love you, and I love the woman you've become through all of this. For the first time in years, I feel something other than grief or determination. I feel hope. I love you too, I say, and mean it completely. But you're wrong about one thing. What's that? Ella isn't just in my heart. She's in everything we've built here, every child we help, every family we save. She's alive in all of it. As we walk through the children's ward together, past rooms filled with hope instead of despair, I realize that Derek and Marissa's greatest failure wasn't just underestimating my strength. It was believing that death could end love, that murder could destroy a family's legacy. They were wrong about everything. Ella's love lives on, stronger than ever in every life we touch, and every family we help heal. And for the first time since I buried my daughter, I'm ready to build something beautiful from the ashes of everything they tried to destroy. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.